The English Mic, learn English.
Hello and welcome to the English Mic. I am so excited to have you here. Whether you're a beginner or looking to sharpen your fluency, this is your space to grow, learn, and speak English with confidence.
Every week on the English Mic, we'll dive into real conversations, practical tips, easy grammar guides, vocabulary boosts, and even common mistakes to avoid all in a fun, simple way.
This is the English Mic, your voice, your language, your podcast. And for this deep dive, wow, we're looking at a really thought-provoking conversation. It features naval ravikant. Yeah, it really does. Human nature, success, happiness, all the big stuff.
Exactly. It touches on so many different facets of life, how we approach happiness, what success even means to us, relationships with ourselves, with others.
How we make sense of it all, basically.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so our mission here, our aim for this deep dive is really to pull out the key insights for everyone listening. Think of it like a shortcut.
Yeah, a shortcut to understanding some pretty deep ideas about, living a good life.
Hopefully sparking some aha moments, maybe, without needing hours to digest the whole original thing.
Right. We'll hit on happiness, success, dealing with societal pressures, that inner voice.
That inner critic, yeah. Okay, let's dive in then.
So one of the first things that really stood out to me was how Naval frames happiness and success. He uses these kind of contrasting examples.
Like Socrates.
Exactly. Socrates finding contentment in, well, basically nothing material. And then you've got, like, Alexander the Great always needing more.
It shows those two paths, doesn't it? Renunciation versus achievement.
Precisely. Two very different ways to look for satisfaction.
And it makes you think. That idea that not wanting something can be just as powerful, maybe even more powerful than having it.
Mm-hmm. What really drives us.
And then that leads to this interesting question he raises. Can chasing happiness actually get in the way of success, in the traditional sense?
Yeah, you might think, if I'm happy, I won't be hungry anymore. I won't strive.
Right. Complacent.
But the flip side, the perspective here, is maybe prioritizing happiness actually makes you pursue things that are more aligned, more authentic to you.
So instead of just chasing money or status,
you go after things that genuinely mean something, which ironically might lead to a different, maybe more impactful kind of success.
It's like the default for many is chasing the material stuff first. Naval even says that was his initial path. It's concrete, right? You can measure it.
Totally. Easier to grasp, maybe.
But the conversation kind of hints that the real goal might be something else, not just getting stuff, but getting free.
Free from what, though?
Free from that constant wanting. Free from the game, as he calls it, the endless desire.
Which is a great question for listeners, actually.
Yeah.
What game are you playing right now? With your energy, your focus?
Yeah. And does winning that game actually give you what you really want? That deeper fulfillment?
Food for thought.
Okay, so building on that, the talk moves into the nature of desire itself. And the flip side, suffering.
Ah, yes. The cycle. It's so common, isn't it? You want something.
You strive, you work hard.
You get it. Momentary satisfaction.
And then, poof, boredom. And you're looking for the next thing.
Exactly. Round and round we go.
But what's insightful here is acknowledging that, well, most good things do come from some short-term pain, right? Delayed gratification.
True. You put in the work now for a benefit later. Standard stuff.
Oh.
But there's a warning here.
Against becoming what did he call it?
A suffering addict, where the suffering itself becomes the point, almost like a badge of honor, instead of focusing on the actual outcome.
Ah, right. Martyr complex territory. That's a really key distinction.
And another one, physical pain versus mental suffering. Anguish.
Yeah, it seems like so much of what we feel as suffering isn't the external thing.
But our reaction to it, our internal story about it.
Exactly, our resistance.
And looking back, big picture, how many people regret not actually enjoying the process, the journey to the goal?
That comes up a lot, apparently, especially with people who hit those big conventional success markers.
They were so focused on the destination.
We missed the whole trip.
Yeah. Which brings up that thought experiment you mentioned.
Oh, the one about talking to your past selves.
Right. Imagine talking to yourself 5, 10, 20 years ago. You can't change what happened to them.
Only how they reacted, their internal state.
Exactly. What advice would you give?
And Naval's takeaway was
that the outcomes might have been the same, but he would have gone through it all with way less anger, less drama, less internal suffering.
So a lot of that mental anguish was optional, self-inflicted.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, now this next bit really made me think. The difference between status games and wealth creation.
Well, this is fascinating. Because status games, fundamentally, are zero-sum. For me to gain status, someone else often has to lose it. Think hierarchies, rankings. There's a limited amount of top spot.
Okay, makes sense. But wealth creation.
That can be positive sum. You can create something valuable, make money, build a business without necessarily taking it directly from someone else. You can grow the pie.
He uses the hunter-gatherer analogy, right?
Yeah.
Back then, it was mostly status, limited resources.
Yeah. Who's the chief? Who gets the best share? Status was key. But now, with technology, innovation, we have way more scope for wealth creation. It's a different world.
So the question becomes, which game is harder to quit?
And the insight is, maybe the status game is tougher to leave. That deep-seated need for social approval, for rank, is powerful. Maybe more powerful than the desire for just stuff.
Even if the stuff brings tangible benefits. Wow.
And that observation about status games, trajectory is more important than position.
Meaning it's not just where you are, but whether you're seen as moving up or down.
Exactly. That feeling of momentum, or lack of it, really affects how you feel and how others see you in that game.
It taps into loss aversion, doesn't it? We hate losing ground. Feeling like you're slipping down the ladder is really uncomfortable.
Hugely uncomfortable. Even if you're still objectively doing okay, it's the change in status that hits hard.
Okay, let's shift to something really core. Self-esteem. How we see ourselves.
Yeah, and the conversation doesn't pull punches here. It says low self-esteem might be the single biggest blocker someone faces.
Wow, that's a big statement.
It is. And the definition is key. It's not just feeling good. It's a reputation you have with yourself.
A reputation with yourself? Based on what?
Based on whether you actually live up to your own internal moral code, your own standards. Are you acting in ways you respect?
That's powerful. It puts the responsibility right back on you.
Totally. And interestingly, a way to build it up, he suggests, is by doing things for others. Acts of service.
Seems backwards, doesn't it? Help others to help yourself.
But it makes sense if self-esteem comes from acting according to your values. If generosity is a value, then being generous builds that self-respect.
It connects to that idea of holistic selfishness, maybe.
Explain that one.
Well, prioritizing your genuine desires. Not being selfish in a bad way, but making sure your actions truly come from you, not just what you think you should want.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Because the danger is becoming like a puppet.
Yeah. Pulled around by what society expects, what your parents wanted, what looks good on Instagram, and you lose touch with what you actually want.
So the antidote is self-observation, like meditation, journaling.
Exactly. Getting to know your own mind, your patterns, your reactions without judgment. Becoming aware of the strings, basically.
Which raises a good question for anyone listening. How well do you really know your own mind? The stories it tells, the energy it spends.
And I liked that concept of the internal golden rule.
Treat yourself like
Others should have treated you. With kindness, respect, understanding. Especially if maybe they didn't. It's about self-compassion.
That's really helpful. And on relationships, there was that distinction between being loved and being in love.
Right. Being loved is maybe more passive, receiving. Being in love is described as more active, expansive.
Something you create by giving it. Outward flowing.
Yeah, exactly. Less about getting, more about generating that feeling itself.
Interesting. Okay, now, pride. He calls pride the most expensive characteristic. Why?
Because it's the enemy of learning. Simple as that.
How so?
If you're too proud, you can't admit you're wrong. You can't see your mistakes. And if you can't see them, you can't learn. You can't adapt. You can't self-correct.
Right. Like holding on to a bad investment because admitting the mistake hurts your pride.
Or staying in a dead-end job or relationship for years. Because leaving feels like admitting failure.
Whereas the really successful creators, artists, entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
they have this ability to just start over.
Let go of the past. Yeah, be a beginner again. That takes humility, not pride.
It really does. A lack of ego about where they are now.
Which connects to enjoying the moment. That point about if you're not actually enjoying yourself, you're not doing anyone any favors.
Yeah, challenges that idea that just grimly enduring is somehow noble.
And this leads right into happiness being, well, maybe a choice.
To some extent, yeah. A frame of mind you actively cultivate. Decide you want to be happy, then figure out how.
But isn't there that fear? If I choose happiness, will I lose my edge, my ambition?
That's the common fear, yeah. Complacency again.
But the argument here is, no. Choosing happiness might actually refine your ambition, make it more authentic.
So you pursue things that align with your happy self which could lead to more fulfilling work, maybe.
Exactly, which avoids that trap he talks about.
The one where we sacrifice the thing we want.
For the thing that's supposed to get it for us, like sacrificing present happiness for future success, assuming success is the path to happiness.
But maybe they're not sequential. Maybe they work together.
That's the idea. They can be synergistic. Being happier might make you better at finding meaningful success, and that success reinforces the happiness. It's a positive loop.
Which requires living authentically, doesn't it? And being okay with saying no.
Definitely. Aligning what you do with what you genuinely want, not just going through the motions or pleasing others.
That story about deleting his calendar. Pretty radical.
Yeah, to make space for acting on inspiration in the moment, not just being locked into obligations.
And reframing procrastination. It's not just laziness.
It's often a sign you just don't want to do that thing right now. Maybe it's the wrong thing or the wrong time.
And the interesting twist is that this kind of happiness and freedom doesn't have to kill productivity. It can actually fuel it.
How?
Because when you're doing things you genuinely enjoy, you have more energy, more focus. You want to put in the time. It's sustainable.
Which links to that productize yourself idea.
Find the thing that feels like play to you.
But looks like work to others and is valuable to them. That's the sweet spot.
Yeah, where your unique passion meets a market need, that's where you can really stand out.
And in today's world, with so many options, the big mistake is committing too soon.
Seems like it. You need that exploration phase. Try things out before locking yourself in. Otherwise, you risk ending up on the wrong path.
So explore first, then commit. And if something isn't working,
kill it quickly. Cut your losses. Don't let pride or sunk costs keep you stuck.
And adopt a no by default policy, especially later on.
Yeah, once you know your direction, you have to protect your time and energy. Saying yes to everything dilutes your focus.
So learning to ignore or politely decline stuff that's irrelevant, that's crucial. Protecting your flow state.
Which requires some emotional resilience, right? Not letting every email or request knock you off course.
Observing your own mind again, not getting hooked by every little thing.
Because it's easy to feel almost obligated. Like we've been trained to say yes.
Yeah.
Saying no can feel weirdly difficult.
That's where that self-observation practice comes in again, isn't it? Creating space between the request and your reaction.
Exactly. So you can choose consciously where your energy goes.
Because, as he points out, things often only become problems when our mind labels them that way. We have more control than we think over what we let bother us.
Yeah, and it's so easy to get sucked into problems totally outside our control, like
doom scrolling the news.
Totally. Getting worked up about global events where you have zero leverage. He calls them mimetic viruses spreading through media.
Catchy term. And they drain your energy and focus.
Absolutely. Which leads back to that core advice. Put your own house in order first.
Hard to take advice on saving the world from someone whose own life is a mess, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay, then the conversation dives into the mind itself, how it can
eat you alive if you don't manage it.
Yeah, and the idea that consciousness is the baseline. Everything else, thoughts, emotions, body is temporary, passing through.
And happiness is largely about interpretation, how you frame your experiences.
Seems to be the point. Same event, different interpretations, totally different feelings.
So focus less on the internal drama and more on missions, things outside yourself.
That's one path to fulfillment, yeah. Getting lost in something bigger than your own ego.
Okay, what about decision making? Gut versus head.
The insight there is that the gut, that refined judgment built over time, often makes the call first.
And the rational mind just comes up with reasons afterward.
Pretty much. It rationalizes the intuition. But developing that reliable gut takes time and experience.
And you have to be careful that strong desires don't hijack it.
Exactly. Right? Desire can cloud that deeper judgment.
Okay, let's talk about change and why it's so hard. Loss aversion.
Yeah, that's a big one. We hate losing what we have, even if it's not great. Relationships, jobs, cities.
We stick with the meh because leaving feels like a loss.
Right. Even if starting over might lead somewhere much better, which links back to
being willing to start over, having the courage to leave the not great enough.
Exactly. That willingness seems key to thriving long term.
And a big part of navigating all this is not taking yourself so seriously.
Oh, yeah. Apparently taking yourself too seriously is a recipe for unhappiness and limits your freedom. You get rigid.
Remembering the inner kid, not getting lost in the veneer of adulthood.
Yeah. Keeping that sense of playfulness, not being overly attached to your image or identity.
Okay, what about those untraceable truths? The cliches like money can't buy happiness. Why do we keep forgetting them?
The idea is they're too broad, too abstract. They only really click when we experience them personally and figure out how they apply to us.
So true understanding isn't just hearing the phrase.
It's being able to derive it from your own life, from first principles, not just repeating it.
Which is the difference between seeming wise and being wise.
Right. Rote memorization versus genuine understanding that comes from experience and reflection.
You can use fancy words to sound smart, but not really get it.
Exactly. And wisdom is finding those general truths within your specific life. Philosophy for everyone, basically.
And science can even feed into that, right?
Yeah.
Giving us new ways to understand old questions.
Okay, shifting slightly. Updating beliefs. Any recent shifts mentioned?
There was a mention of becoming less purely laissez-faire about society.
Meaning?
Acknowledging the value of culture, maybe even religion, as systems that help build trust and cooperation in society.
Ah, okay, so not purely individualistic, recognizing that shared frameworks matter.
Yeah, and that breaking them down too fast without replacements can cause problems.
Interesting. And on parenting.
A looser approach. Let kids be kids. Foster their agency.
Let them solve their own problems. Don't be too controlling or preachy.
Right. The analogy was wanting to raise wild animals and wolves, not well-trained dogs.
Yeah.
Empowered, not just obedient.
Strong image. What about the culture war?
The take was, it's probably ongoing, maybe more of a fair fight now than before, but likely a permanent tension in society, not something easily won or lost.
Makes sense. And dealing with information overload.
Yeah, huge mismatch between our evolved brains and the 247 global news cycle.
So be super selective about what you care about.
Focus locally. Focus on what you can actually influence. Protect your attention.
Back to that desire contract. I'll be unhappy until X happens. If X is some global event you can't control.
You're setting yourself up for unhappiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about getting past difficult pasts? Trauma, hardship.
The advice is to process it, learn from it, but not let it become your whole identity. Don't dwell there for attention.
Cut the Gordian knot. Move on decisively.
Something like that. Don't get stuck trying to untangle it forever.
And the true currency, the most fundamental resource, isn't money or time, but
attention. Where you choose to put your focus, that's the ultimate resource to manage.
Gotcha. And that interesting point about starting as a loser.
Yeah, the idea that early disadvantage can sometimes build the drive and resilience needed to win later.
But don't artificially create hardship for your kids or anything.
No, definitely not. Just an observation about how adversity can shape character.
And finally, a brief mention of philanthropy, encouraging contributions through recognition.
Yeah, aligning incentives for societal good.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a ton there. Happiness, self-awareness, authenticity, societal games, conscious choices.
It really was a deep dive into Naval's thinking, lots of interconnected ideas about how to navigate life.
Absolutely. From the internal landscape of self-esteem and pride to the external games of status and wealth.
And always coming back to awareness, choice, and where you direct that precious resource, attention.
So for our final thought to leave everyone mulling over,
Yeah.
building on all this.
Take a moment, maybe later today, and really reflect. What are the main games you're playing in your life right now? Career, relationships, status, whatever.
And ask yourself honestly, are the rules and rewards of those games truly aligned with what you define as a fulfilling life, your deepest values?
And maybe, just maybe, consider one small concrete step you could take. Something actionable.
What could you do, maybe even today, to consciously pull back just a little bit of your attention?
Yeah, reclaim it from the endless external noise, or even from that internal chatter, that rumination. What's one small act of reclaiming your focus? Something to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Yeah, thanks everyone. We really hope exploring these ideas has given you some valuable things to think about.
And maybe even apply in your own life.
We look forward to having you join us again next time right here on the English Mic.